Hello class and welcome to the first walkthrough of the new year, and this is a special one because late last year we celebrated a milestone on this channel, and to help celebrate we had an open vote where the class could suggest and vote on the first class we did this year, so here we are. This one can have some tough stretches. In terms of difficulty, it's not always clear where to go, and the many enemies and bosses of this game can be formidable if you don't know what you're doing, but there are plenty of checkpoints and unlimited continues essentially. If you average all that together, I'm going to go ahead and give this Hudson Soft title a 7 out of 10, which on the frustration scale equates to punching a hole through the wall. Maybe because you lost a bunch of gold before you're able to make the big purchase or get to that next checkpoint, but rest assured, we're going to make this game a figurative breeze. We've got all the tips and secrets to get you started off on the right foot, all the way through to the end. Fluff is going to share a number of interesting facts about this game. Blaze has your items and magic guide, and Gary's got tips for taking down every boss to make this title a lot easier. In fact, with this walkthrough in mind, the hardest thing about this game is knowing how to pronounce it. So, in the interest of not embarrassing myself, do any of my TAs know offhand how to pronounce the name of this game?
I can help you with that one, Professor. It's Faxanadu.
Alright, this is Blaze, our resident items and magic guide for this walkthrough, so Faxanadu.
Boss beaters. Professor, sorry to interrupt. Blaze, I hate to correct you, but I believe it's Faxanadu.
So Faxanadu?
Sounds like a car wax. I'm not so sure about that.
We need Fluff to set this straight. Let's bring him in for our first Fluff fact of the new year. Fluff, which is it? Faxanadu or Faxanadu?
Actually, it's neither. It's meant to be a portmanteau of Famicom, meaning the family computer, which was essentially the NES's counterpart in Japan, and Xanadu, which in literature and popular culture refers to a dreamlike, pleasure-filled paradise. But more specifically in this case, it's the name of the second game in the Dragon Slayer series, which this game exists in. With all that said, technically, it's Faxanadu, which is kind of awful. So, I say just call it whatever you want.
So, Faxanadu.
No, Faxanadu.
Let's run the intro. Alright, as we begin a new game and we get some context here at the start of Faxanadu, let's take a look at the controls for Faxanadu. I'm going to bounce around with my pronunciation throughout this class, forgive me class, but attack with B, jump with A, pause with start, bring up our inventory screen for spells, different armor we've bought, weapons, and then we have a few combinations over there shown on the left. Up plus B is your magic you currently have equipped to use that. Down plus B is to use the item you currently have equipped. You certainly have it equipped. And there's no duck, unfortunately, but you can move around with that D-pad, enter doors with up, and talk to NPCs as well. Speaking of NPCs, we're going to ignore the first few, enter this cathedral right here, and press up to talk to this man. And he's going to give us an item, and Blaze, what is this first ring we got?
Alright, the Elf Sapphire Ring. Get this early on in the game, and this grants you an audience with the king.
Alright, thank you, Blaze. So let's exit out and head to the west, and we're gonna go get an audience with the king, but en route, we're actually going to intentionally get killed by these enemies on this screen. And this brings us to the Briggs notes for this class. These are the keys in this Faxanadu walkthrough. There you go, see, I'm jumping all over the place. When I see it phonetically, I just see Faxanadu, but the first Briggs note here, start smart. So die like we just did. The reason we did this is so that you'll get sent back to the last guru you just talked to, the one that, in this case, we just talked to, but with full health and magic. And there's a bit more to it, but for right now, this saves us from having to spend money to get our meters topped off. I guess after that journey, we were kind of beat up, but we're going to stock up on good items. We'll talk about that in a second, but we're also going to trick the king. So the king is going to, in addition to telling us our quest here, he's going to finance us, stake us with 1,500 gold right off the start. Nice thing for him to do. This king has a famously short-term memory, so if we spend every single penny of this 1,500 gold and come back and talk to him again, he will give us a fresh 1,500 gold. So there is a way, if we head back into town here to the right, we can spend exactly $1,500 while picking up a lot of items and spells that one spell that we need early on here in Faxanadu. So I'm going to head back and just follow along with the purchases which we make here in this store right here. And kind of brings us into our second of the Briggs notes. Keep stocked on red potions. Very important. Blaze will talk about that. The wing boots and the elixir. Blaze will talk about that as well in time. But the purchase order to make here. First, grab yourself 3 of those red potions we just talked about. Unfortunately, you can't buy them in bulk at once. You have to keep talking to him for every single purchase. I guess he's a lonely man, class. Let's give him this interaction. So 3 red potions, and then while we're going in and out of conversation with this guy, I mentioned the final Briggs note, and we're also going to buy ourselves, after those 3 red potions, an elixir. This brings us to 700 gold. So now we can purchase the Deluge spell for 400. This will get us down to 300 gold left, and then we'll go into the shop next door. You could also buy the hand dagger if you want. We're going to buy both ultimately, but for this class, we're going to grab the Deluge spell. We're going to head right, go next door, and then buy ourselves 3 of the Jack keys right here. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. But lastly, just to get the Briggs notes off the screen, follow this guide for the best route, all the hidden secrets. We guarantee you'll be able to beat this game very handily and learn a number of things about this game as well by following along with this Faxanadu walkthrough here on Video Games 101. So yeah, grab 3 of these keys, and we will now be broke at 0 gold. And let's head back to the west, like that first Briggs note mentioned, and trick the king to giving us a fresh 1,500 gold, and then we'll come back and we'll pick up that hand dagger, and then we'll be good to leave town finally. But let's bring in Blaze now for an overview on a few of these early items we're picking up here in Faxanadu. Blaze, how about that red potion?
Alright, the red potion. This refills your health to the max. The only catch is, unlike the elixir, you have to actually use this before you die, so make sure you have it queued up. Hold down, press B to redeem this, max out your health when things are looking grim.
Alright, and the elixir we bought as well?
Alright, elixirs. You can't use these. These are automatically triggered if you have one in your inventory upon death. This will max out your health and magic once you die. Very few of these in the game, so be on the lookout for the elixirs.
Thank you, Blaze. Yeah, you can only carry 1 at a time. We bought the Deluge spell as well, Blaze.
Alright, Deluge, the first spell you can get here in Faxanadu, or however you want to pronounce it. This goes across the screen, roughly 6 damage. Very cheap. The cheapest spell at 2 MP per cast, so you could cast it without worrying about dipping into your magic, but there you go. Supplement that those physical close range attacks of your dagger with Deluge.
Speaking of that dagger, how much damage are we doing with that one?
Alright, the hand dagger, this is the first weapon we can get for 4 damage. Better than nothing, better than just flipping enemies the bird, which I've tried it, does 0 damage. Grab yourself the hand dagger early on before you leave this first town.
Alright, thank you, Blaze. Make sure you equip them going into your inventory. Note that you can't do it in the shops generally, so I find it's very useful to do a little jump here and attack these early enemies. It's monodrones, I believe they're called. So we're going to equip our key now, our J key, and press up to unlock that door. And as you're out and about taking down enemies, you'll find they'll drop certain items, or certain items will appear sometimes. So let's get an overview on kind of more of the items you can find out and about from killing enemies directly or just ones which appear here in Faxanadu.
Alright, let's talk about the items you'll find out and about in this game. First, we have bread. Comes in many different varieties. Most of them look the same, but the tougher enemies will drop better breads, which will restore more health. So your top tier Asiago, your artisan type breads right there. Yeah, look out for those to restore more health when you kill certain enemies. Certain enemies will also leave behind coins when you take them down, typically either coins or bread, so you'll get something one way or the other. Always experience, of course. And then we have some items which, as Fluff mentions, only appear after you kill certain enemies on certain screens or clear out certain screens, and you have certain percentage chances. But, Fluff talks about that. But this includes the glove, the ointment, and, the poison is the exception. You'll find the poison on a lot of screens. Don't mistake this for the ointment. This is the smaller bottle. This takes a fixed amount of your health, but the ointment and the glove, these will give you 20 seconds of invulnerability and extra attack power, respectively, for those two. So sometimes they'll just be there on the screen. Other times, you gotta work for them a little bit, like Fluff talks about. But there you go. Some of the items you'll find out and about in this game.
Thank you, Blaze. You'll notice there was a shop or a door which led to a shop which we passed a couple screens back. Before we got to town, they have some very expensive but very useful loot, actually. I went ahead and bought the small shield, completely optional, but Blaze, how about that small shield?
The small shield reduces magic and projectile damage by 50%. You should have the magic shield, a much better investment. Despite the price, go for that. Ignore the magic shield, or the small shield, excuse me. Go for the magic shield. Leave this one for the kids.
I guess I'm a kid, thank you, Blaze. Yeah, we're going to seriously upgrade it with the magic shield in just a moment. Note that we can't hit those little guys, little spiky guys, Zozoras, I think they're called, until we have a different physical weapon. We can use Deluge to take them down, but if you want to hold on to your mana, that's your prerogative. We're going to equip a key now and enter the Tower of Trunk here to grab a couple items, and aside from gold and bread, we're going to bring in Fluff now to better explain why certain items appear on certain screens when they do.
There are a lot of screens in this game where useful items like red potions, ointments, and winged boots will appear at random once you defeat the last enemy on the screen. One interesting example early on is you even have a chance of triggering a Matic on this screen en route to the boss, who gives you this item for defeating them. So you can just grab it here early on, turn around, and skip the boss altogether if you so choose. The items have a 1 in 4 chance of appearing, so if you don't get what you want at first, leave the screen, return, and defeat all the enemies to try again. There's typically no limit to how many items you can collect per screen, so even after you collect that item, you can leave and come back to try for another one. Certain items like the ointment appear in some very useful spots later on in the game, and can make for game changers when used effectively, as the professor will point out.
Certainly will do, thank you very much, Fluff. So before we continue further here, we mentioned the secret shop en route to that last town, which has some very good loot. Not a bad idea to stop off here and do a bit of grinding between these two screens in particular. You'll find it's very easy to trap these enemies, let them pop over your head just like that, trap them against the wall, and you'll find every time you kill one of them, you'll get an extra 100 gold to your total. And takes about, in doing some number crunching, some time crunching here, takes about, I'd say, a minute to make 1,000 gold. So about 6 seconds per every time we're making 100 gold here, once you get into a really nice rhythm. So I'm actually going to stop off here. I encourage you to do the same and earn yourself about 7,600 gold right here to afford the magic shield, which Blaze kind of mentioned reference when he was talking about the small shield, which we purchased here for at a much cheaper rate, admittedly, but yeah, the magic shield, as Blaze will mention once we do purchase it, much more valuable. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump ahead here. You can see we now have 20,000 gold, and needed to use a red potion there. Whittled down my health a little bit throughout the course here, but just, yeah, getting to that rhythm takes about 20 minutes to get from 0 to 20,000 gold. The 20,000 is if you want to purchase the magic shield and the spell, which is also sold in that same shop, a very powerful spell, which you do not need to get. I don't necessarily recommend picking it up. We're actually going to be playing as if we're going to purchase it, but we're going to play as if we didn't buy it, so we're not going to rely on that spell. So, but I do recommend grinding to get that 7,600 before you up and leave this place. We don't have to go back and buy the shield just yet. We do have a boss coming up, but We have the best boss guru in the biz, if I can use a term from this game in Guru, in Gary, so I know he's going to have a good strategy for us, so don't need to have a game-changing shield when it comes to this next boss. When Gary's got the tips, but plenty of bread to be had. You should be at full health regardless. Not that it's going to be an issue for this boss, but just wanted to mention that. You can easily refill your health via Deluge on these little guys, and let's get some tips now on this first boss with Gary.
It's Scary Gary's Boss Beater.
Bosses, if you want to call them that, in Faxanadu aren't that difficult. In fact, the harder part might be pronouncing their names. So we start with Ripasheiku. Usually the strategy's pretty similar. Sometimes you'll have a ledge with certain bosses like this one here. We're just going to get head level with the boss, stand on that ledge, and stab whenever he comes close. This is a battle of patience. You can't get hurt if you repeat this strategy, but just wait for him to come to you, start stabbing, or you can use your spell if you get impatient. But there you go. Ripasheiku.
Thank you very much, Gary. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Just sit there. If you get a little impatient like we did there, just whip out some Deluge and do the rest of the damage. But grab that Matic, whatever you want to call it, pronounce it. Blaze, what did we just pick up?
Alright, the Matic. You can find these in some stretches of the game, but we only really need it early on in the game, as you're about to, the professor's about to show the Matic knocks down walls, so you can keep on playing that game.
Thank you, Blaze. And as Fluff mentioned, yeah, there's a couple other places where you can grab those, which we're going to show you, even instances where you don't need what's hidden in some of the places, but again, we're going to show you virtually everything there is to find and see in this game. There's a couple towers in this game which are literally a complete waste of your time, but for the most part we'll be showing you everything. And as we're backtracking back to make those two purchases, gonna buy the magic shield and the death spell. That's the very powerful spell we can get early on in this game, which again is completely not necessary, and it's your own prerogative whether or not you want to purchase it. But we're going to stop off in this town en route, stop off at the treatment center along the way. It's pretty affordable early on, but inflation as we go throughout the game hits a lot of towns very hard. Things get very expensive, especially these treatments, but right now we can spend $250 to get our health and our magic topped off, so that's a pretty good deal, seeing as we didn't work too hard to make that money to begin with. And we're also going to stop off at the cathedral and check in with the guru, who's going to essentially upgrade our rank here, our title, give us a new title. I think we'll make warrior. There you go. There's different cutoffs. He says make sure you live up to it. So the rank system in this game could be done a lot better, I have to say. When it comes to Faxanadu, you have to take the bad with the good sometimes. And, well, we'll talk about that in just a moment. But, yeah, let's pop in here, get the magic shield and the death spell. Blaze, you mentioned this earlier, but what can you tell us about the magic shield?
Alright, the magic shield, certainly well worth the purchase early on in the game. If you can only afford one, go for the magic shield. This reduces the magic and projectile damage you'll take by 90%. Just make sure you're facing the enemies when they're firing at you for it to absorb the damage.
Thank you, Blaze. And how about that death spell?
Alright, the death spell. This does approximately 35 damage for 10 MP. Very expensive, but you can get it very early on in the game if you're willing to put in a little bit of effort, like the professor talks about. But just a basic spell goes across the screen, but very powerful, especially for early on in the game.
Thank you, Blaze. Yeah, the purchase price, by which I mean to cast it, not to actually buy it. That's pretty ridiculous in itself. It's kind of ridiculous how long it takes to... It's like he has to count every single dime that we're putting on the counter here, just making sure we're not trying to double-cross the man. You'd think he'd be grateful for the business, but certainly equip that magic shield. The last shield we'll need to equip for the rest of the game. It's that good, as Blaze mentioned. And we'll pop that death spell on right now as well, even though it's an overkill for a lot of these baddies. Not gonna lie, it's instant kill for virtually anything we come across for a very long time in this game, which is fitting considering it's called the death spell. But a word on the promotions, the ranks, the titles, as we're gonna head to the east now and use that mattock to pickaxe our way through the wall. But in this game, the different titles you get have no bearing on the amount of damage you can dish out or take, unfortunately. I think that was a missed opportunity where they could have employed more RPG elements like that. But instead, if you die, you come back with more money and a certain experience checkpoint, essentially. So if you are going to die, then it's much better to have a better rank than a worse rank in this game. This is where we're going to use that pickaxe right here. So pull out the mattock and hold down and press B. That was overkill on that poor creature, but there you go. It's a single-use item. And actually, this is an area where we can earn ourselves a red potion. Like Fluff mentioned, it'll show up right there on that pedestal. A lot of times, it's kind of a giveaway when there's a pedestal sitting like that. It's kind of your cue that something may spawn in there. Has that 1 in 4 chance if you kill the enemies on that screen, so you might want to pop back. But again, we're going to be pointing them all out. But yeah, that's all there is to the titles, essentially. There is one exception where it's nice to have a certain rank later on in the game, which we'll talk about. It's also worth mentioning that the rank works counterintuitively and works against you in one case, and its effect on your ability to use the winged boots. Blaze mentioned that's the boots that allow you to fly, but yes, as mentioned, the higher your rank, the less time you have to fly with the wing boots. We'll stop off over here, just grab these attack gloves. I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to the deluge so we don't waste more mana than we need on this creature. Grab this, we get a little boost to our attack for a limited time. But yeah, there are a few aspects of Faxanadu which just feel kind of broken. Like they didn't think them through, or there's just glitches in the code. And yeah, the reverse system with the wing boots seems like one of those instances. We'll point out a couple more later on as we play on, but for that reason you may not want to max out your rank, or your title better said, in this game. You can follow along with how we do it. We generally go to around the warrior status, or the soldier status I should say, specifically. So in addition to the treatment areas, you also have these dried meat areas where you can purchase those. They don't give you the magic back, but they'll give you back some of your health, and it's generally at a much more fair price than the treatment guys are charging. So stop in here and definitely stop off and grab yourself the longsword. And Blaze, why are we buying the longsword?
The longsword, better reach than that hand dagger. Double the damage as well. Grab this as soon as possible for 8 damage, the long sword.
Thank you, Blaze. And we don't have the money for the studded mail, but Blaze, I don't think you want us to buy it anyway, right? What's the deal with that?
Alright, the studded mail. Not even worth it in my opinion. This reduces physical damage by 10%. Save your money. Just avoid the physical damage. Easier said than done, Blaze, I understand, but still, not worth the money. Skip the studded mail.
Good call, thank you, Blaze. So yeah, when you check in with these gurus at the cathedral, if you were due for a promotion, which is at certain checkpoints with your experience level, obviously we got a whole lot during that grinding session earlier, trying to, you can see, 500 golds. Already doubled in price between towns. A little crazy, the inflation. An ointment will appear here, 1 in 4 chance if you take out all these ghosts who just come down in this line right here. Easy to pick off with our new longsword. Don't forget to equip it. We can now hit enemies on the ground, by the way, or those enemies we had earlier. Take this ladder right here and stay on the top track. But yes, those gurus will essentially save your game, or give you a checkpoint. They'll give you that password as well, but they'll mark your progress. So if you die, you'll show up back at them and when you respawn. So you can use one of our jack keys, the final one that we got from that initial round of key buying back in that first town. Use it to enter the Tower of Fortress here. By the way, there's never any cause to actually purchase wing boots in this game. There's plenty of free ones, and a lot of instances of free red potions as well in this game. So unless you've got a lot of money to burn, which in some cases you will, just by virtue of battling your way through some of these places. And if you're up to date with your equipment, a lot of these much more manageable. You can see projectiles not doing just nearly 0 damage to us right now. With the reach of our long sword right here, you can get right up to the edge and take down some enemies. It's much better to just let these projectile shooting enemies hit you as you're facing them, rather than just, trying to stab them or having your back to them, or even trying to jump over them in some cases. That's how good the magic shield is, so just something to keep in mind anytime someone's trying to hit you with a projectile. As long as you can absorb it in the front right there with that shield, not the worst strategy. Again, our guy has that, he needs to build up a little momentum when he's moving around this game. It's a little, kind of a strange gameplay quirk, the way that they designed it there, but if you jump, you can give yourself a little extra momentum boost, kind of, especially if you're starting to move from standing still. Ultimately, we're trying to go to the northeasternmost part of this tower. We can grab ourselves some of the wing boots, but make sure you have an elixir for this upcoming part. There's actually an elixir here elsewhere in this tower, which we're going to grab one as soon as we use this first elixir. This is the one instance in the game where the elixir is not used to restore health or magic for our hero, but instead we're going to give it to this guy above us once we get up to him via this ladder right here. You can see another elixir on the other side of that wall. We're going to show up there in a little bit, but so he's going to ask you if we can give him the elixir right here. And this is going to heal the spring, or get it flowing again. And getting the water running in this part of the game is, that's what this part of the game is all about, essentially. Getting the water flowing in a number of springs, one of which we need wing boots to access, so there's our first instance of an ointment in this game. So we can grab this. This one's just sitting here already, free from injury because of the ointments. This is giving us a good 20 seconds of invincibility. The sole exception is from projectiles, fireballs, so just keep that in mind. Again, we don't really care because we have the magic shield, but yeah, it's not so much about the damage, but just being knocked probably somewhere where you don't want to be, so ignore the poison that's in the bottom left here, and time for another kind of sort of boss. Gary?
Boss beat. Bora. You want to get head level? Very similar to the Ripasheiku, and just stab when they come over to you. Even when you don't have a ledge, it's not too difficult. Just jump and stab, knock them back. They're not too offensively minded, this boss. Just keep jumping, stabbing her. Get on a nice ledge, you'll take him down.
Yep, very similar, and another boss right on its heels.
Boss beat. Like the Zorugeriru, it doesn't matter, just very quickly get on top of the boss and stab them. Just takes a couple hits, but you want to take them out as quickly as possible whenever you see one of these guys on the screen, because the boulders they will drop with their machine will hurt you. You want to stab the machine, not the boss. You could stand on top of them without taking any damage, so just prioritize getting on top of them as quick as possible, destroy their machine before one of those boulders can do some serious damage to that noggin.
Good call, Gary. Grab ourselves a replacement elixir, make up for the one we just gave away. But yeah, we earned some wing boots from that last, if you want to call it a boss. There's actually one more pair to be found in this Tower of Fortress. That's more of a 1 in 4 opportunity. So, to get it, we need to be careful when we drop down. You can hear that deflection sound. We take a little bit of damage with that magic shield, but yeah, for the most part, it's being absorbed. Alright, so stay on this ledge in this room when you come in from the top. And if you take down all of these flying bee creatures, this is where you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting a second pair of wing boots. And nice to have a couple pair, actually, one of which we'll need very soon, actually, to progress the story, progress the game. But they can also serve as very useful shortcuts later on in the game, as we will show one very late in the game, which is a major health, time, and sanity saver. But yeah, once it appears, it'll appear right there where you're standing. Make sure you're at the far left side, because those bees can knock you off down below, and then that makes it impossible to access the wing boots from down there. You can pop in there and talk to a guru, and he'll basically tell you that outside there is a kind of fountain, a spring in the sky, which needs to be fixed, rejuvenated, just as we did back in the Tower Fortress. But yeah, easy to drop back out the bottom right there for the shortcut exit. We're just gonna jump all the way off to the right here. No pits, thankfully. And go to the right here. And on this screen is where we're going to use the wing boots, but if we go over here to the right, you can see that pedestal on the right hand side. Like we mentioned earlier, this is where kind of the giveaway of how you know that a potentially good item could possibly appear right there. In this case, it's a red potion. So not the worst idea to maybe do this a few times. Make sure you've got a healthy supply of red potions in your inventory. Unfortunately, we have a very limited amount of inventory space here in Faxanadu, so you have to really prioritize what you're holding on to. You can't go wrong with red potions, obviously, but unfortunately keys count for inventory slots just like any other item, so you have to make sure you're not carrying more keys than you need, and you're especially carrying the types of keys that you need as well. You don't want to be carrying outdated keys which have no purpose in the game moving forward. We'll move on from Jack keys to Queen keys, sensing a pattern here. Eventually King keys, but King keys? I heard it after I said it, but use your wing boots right out here, equip them or pull them up in your inventory and hold down and press B to trigger them. You can see the time limit that we have to use them here. Talk to this guy. We only have 30 seconds if we are on the warrior title, which we are at right now. And yeah, the higher your title, as I mentioned, the less time you will have in the air with the wing boots. The best titles, or the quote-unquote best titles in this game, give you the least amount of time, down to 10 seconds for the last few ranks, the last few titles. You start out with 40 seconds with the wing boots, but yeah, because we took that warrior promotion. And unfortunately, when you go to one of the gurus, you can't turn down a promotion. Like if you say, hey, I just want to stop in and, get my checkpoint, save my game. Yeah, they don't do that. So, it's tricky, but anyway, we're going to stop off here and purchase ourselves some of those Queen keys. We need one more Jack key, actually, to get back into that tower, but we shouldn't need them anymore moving forward in the game. So now we can get ourselves one or two of those Queen keys. You'll be fine just having one at the moment, but we'll stop back in a little bit later. But we're heading up, backtracking back into the Tower of Fortress and back to see that guru. I call him a guru, but just because he exists in one of those cathedrals. But he's going to give us a special key which we need to access that locked door that we just kind of ran right by down below this area. So I guess a shortcut, technically, you could use some wing boots to just fly right up there and get to him, but it's your prerogative if you want to do that. You can, probably not a bad idea to just use the wing boots as soon as you come inside, fly up, get to that ledge where we know that another wing boots has a chance to spawn in, and get another pair just by going back up that ladder and coming back down again. But also not a bad opportunity to get ourselves some more health, some more bread by virtue of these weak enemies. So while we're going to see this guy and get ourselves an item to ultimately get another item, which will ultimately allow us to continue on. It's just a lot of fetch questing right here in a relatively small vicinity. let's bring in Fluff for our first non-pronunciation related Faxanadu fact today. Fluff, what do you got for us?
Faxanadu is an action-adventure title with some role-playing elements, which was released in 1987 for the Famicom in Japan, and 2 years later for the NES in North America. As I referenced in the opening, this game is part of the Dragon Slayer RPG series from Japanese video game developer Nihon Falcom. As the professor alluded to in opening, Falcom actually wasn't the developer on Faxanadu. Instead, the people at mainstay Japanese NES developer Hudson Soft were purportedly fans of Falcom's Japanese computer system's exclusive Xanadu game and licensed the title, character, and concepts to bring that world to the Famicom and NES as a sort of spin-off title. Faxanadu is known as a somewhat underrated gem in the NES's vast library today, as is evidenced in part by the fact that it was the most requested game for us to do a class on in our first ever Video Games 101 open voting session.
Yes, it was. Thank you very much, Fluff. Learned some interesting things about it. You don't get a lot of instances where one developer licenses out concepts from another company, although there is precedent for that, especially with Hudson Soft with Adventure Island. We had just did a class on that not too long ago, and Fluff actually mentioned when they did that with the Wonder Boy series, or the first game in that series to make Adventure Island. Pretty much just a sprite swap, but anyway, we stop off here and spend the 500 to top off our power and magic again, en route to using the key that guy just gave us down in that room right there. And you know what, not the worst idea. I mentioned you could get yourself an ointment. Here in the top left, we have a 1 in 4 chance of spawning one in here after we defeat all these enemies. So we can use this to, there you go. So let's just get some momentum and jump to the right here and drop down to this door we need to open with that key. And the only reason you might want to do that is because there's one of those winged bosses right in here as soon as you pop in that Gary talked about earlier, the Ripasheiku. But pass him or fight him, go to the right here. Make sure you talk to this guy a couple times to make sure he actually gives you the Ring of Ruby, which we'll need. And Blaze, the Ring of Ruby?
Alright, the Ring of Ruby. This allows you to move rocks according to the manual. Put an asterisk there because it's literally just one rock that we need to move with the Ring of Ruby. Passive item, just get to pushing once you pick this up.
Thank you, Blaze. Yes, we're gonna head, finally, again, it's just a lot of fetching in this very small vicinity, just a handful of screens ultimately. Got our money's worth out of that ointment though. Which, I mean, it was free, but this time we don't need to climb any ladders. We just go to the left here. And we're going to use that ring. Again, just passive, and gonna move to the left here to push this thing out of the way. Kind of power bracelet style from The Legend of Zelda. And you can see it right there. It's just there on the player menu right there as a passive item. Always in effect. And you need to use your first queen key right here. We just bought one back in that last town, so let's press on through here and head to the road to Mascon. Very misty. Let's see here. Another opportunity to get some winged boots. If you went across to the right there, right when you came in, it's right above you, but not that worth it. You can get knocked down pretty easily, so it's more trouble than it's worth. Plenty more instances, opportunities to get yourself some wing boots here in this game. Speaking of better opportunities, or more opportunities, just going to show you the route to this. I mentioned there were just a couple towers, or dungeon areas in this game, if you will, which are unnecessary for visiting. This is one of them right here. This tower right here. If you head inside, you have a chance to earn yourself a red potion, but you have to fight through number of enemies to get it. So, not saying red potions aren't worth it, it's just more trouble than it's worth, and again, plenty of opportunities to just spawn those in through a number of different screens, like we had earlier at the bottom of the hill before we flew up and activated that spring. But anyway, now in Mascon here, get some rations for a much more affordable price than the treatment. Especially if you don't need any magic, it's definitely the play in every town. Stop off in the key shop here. We're going to need at least one queen key. You can grab a couple if you want. Certainly going to need them in time, but yeah, if you can afford them. By the way, that tower which we skipped over that I mentioned had the red potion that required a queen key. For what that's worth, but again, not necessary, not worth the trouble. Nothing else to see in that one. There's actually another optional tower coming up, which we will show because it has an item and a useless item, but we're going to show it nonetheless. So stay on these blocks here and jump all the way and drop in this rightmost gap and hold to the right when you drop down. And make sure you stay upright here. It's easy to fall. Make sure you got a little head of steam before you make these jumps and you got no flying enemies around you to knock you back down. But we're going to get to a very difficult to reach shop up here. I can't imagine this guy gets a lot of customers. Just makes me laugh what he expects from his customers. Climbing Ninja Warrior style, or maybe American Gladiators if you prefer, but certainly off the beaten path. But he's got an interesting assortment of items here. He's one of the rare merchants who sells elixirs at a very expensive price, you can see. His price on the red potions isn't too bad, so if you don't feel like waiting around killing enemies to get one to spawn in. He's got the hourglass, but we'll get one of those a little more naturally in the upcoming optional tower, which we're going to show. And he's got a better price on the death spell as well. One of the rare instances where we can get that spell as well. You can see why I didn't recommend that you buy the death spell, as we just really haven't needed to use it so far, if I'm honest. It's just, it's very expensive, and we don't have that much magic. Again, I can't help but, once again, kind of wish that the developers had, given you a bit more HP or a bit more magic points when you got those promotions, different titles, but I guess they wanted to go against the grain, do something a little bit different, and they certainly did. As got lucky there, playing a little too fast and loose, but almost had our first death. So sort of referenced earlier how there are some towers in this game, some dungeon areas which you can avoid altogether. Kind of referenced that with the red potion tower, if you will. Once again a moment ago, and the next area we're going to go to sort of references, it has an item which we actually don't need, but we're going to show it to you nonetheless, just to give you the pretty much complete experience here. You can pop into this right room. You can only use magic in here, you can't use your weapon. Just stick with our deluge spell, but cast it on this guy, and you have a chance of getting a pair of wing boots. So if you want to pop back in, relatively easy way to grab yourself some wing boots right here. There we go. 1 in 2 chance in our case right there. Again, not a bad idea to have at least 1, if not 2 pair of these in your inventory most of the time, along with whatever keys you need, and then round it out with the red potions. Maybe an hourglass, which we're going to grab for ourselves in this next, again, completely optional tower that we're going into here. The Tower of Suffer. And we need a queen key for this. I want to mention those 3 rooms. We went to the right one to attack that guy to get the wing boots. If we'd gone into the middle door, there was another enemy on the left side, but if you go into the middle door, there was a guru who will save your progress or give you a new title if you are due one at that time. Again, it really doesn't matter, the titles in this game. Even the amount of money that you come back with isn't that big of a deal. It's, you know, a few thousand for most of the other practical titles, which you'll have. Not talking about the absolute maxed out ones at the end of the game, but yeah, with the amount of money which we're making from most of the enemies late in the game, you don't need to rely on the comeback title. But still, saving your progress is certainly good in case you die, so I'm not going to tell you not to stop in and see the gurus, but just that reminder again that it does have the adverse effect on your wing boots, and I think we're going to aim for the soldier status, which is the one which actually can save you some money in a couple towns, as we will cover. And reference this item a little bit earlier in that difficult to reach shop, the hourglass, which you could purchase for 5,600 gold. If you want one, this is the place to get it right here. One will appear at random if you just keep popping back up here and taking out these enemies. And as we are trying to get that 1 in 4 chance for the hourglass to appear, Blaze, what do we do with the hourglass?
Alright, the hourglass doesn't have a lot of purpose in this game. It freezes most enemies for roughly 15 seconds and even stops bosses from firing projectiles at you. Sounds great, right, Blaze? This actually costs you, inexplicably, half your life for some reason for you to be able to use it. So make sure you got some health before you use it. And you can use this on one boss late in the game in particular. Gary will mention it, but there you go, the hourglass.
Had to burn the elixir, but thank you, Blaze. We got our hourglass right there. Just gonna hang on to that for the remainder of the game. Don't like that it's gonna eat up an inventory slot for us, but yeah, if you ever need to freeze everybody on the screen at the cost of half of your health, very specific scenario, but that's what it's there for. Sometimes it's nice just to use the deluge or something to knock these enemies back, because try making that jump or just kind of fall in general. And you'll drop into that spot right there, but anyway, we continue on, and just one more reminder, this is a completely optional area of the game. You do not need to be here, but as we use our death spell for the first time quite effectively on one of those bosses Gary mentioned earlier. But this will earn us the pendant, and Blaze, you're telling me we should not pick this up.
Alright, the pendant, the biggest head scratcher in this game. Do not pick it up, Professor or class. This actually reduces damage you deal by roughly 15%, according to my testing. What the heck? What is going on with that? Even the manual tells you this boosts your attack. Not the case. I have tested it myself. Avoid this at all costs.
Thanks, Blaze. Yeah, the manual got seemingly a lot of things wrong about this game. Some of the magic, certainly the amulet. It's just a very, again, I think I mentioned this earlier with Faxanadu or Faxanadu. It's a good game, but you gotta take the bad with the good. A lot of things could have been done better, and that's certainly one of them. Items which, unaccountably, just glitches in programming, assumingly, which, just work out to your disadvantage, which again makes coming to this entire tower, that's the main thing to be grabbed here. Sure, we save some money by getting that hourglass, but completely unnecessary overall and ultimately. So we're heading out now, and we are backtracking, and we have one more area where you actually absolutely need the wing boots to progress the game, and that is right here. I think this is the last instance where you need them versus it just being kind of a nice bonus to give you a shortcut. But yeah, use these and just get the don't fly too high. I always make that mistake right there. Your instinct is just to fly straight up and avoid that enemy, but yeah, get him to lure him out and jump over the ledge and then just fly up straight up the ladder. And might as well fly. Why walk when you can fly? Why climb when you can fly? But this will take us to the next town, called Victim. And I alluded to this earlier, but this is where we might want to redeem our title, and blowing this guy's mind right now. And if you have 1,800 experience, which we are right there on the cusp, so if you've been playing along in a similar fashion, did the grinding early on, you should have about 18,000. Get that soldier upgrade, and we're going to go to the tavern and save ourselves $5,200, as you'll see in a second, as we're dropping 2,500 just to get our bars topped off. You can see treatments are getting expensive, but we're going to head to the tavern now and grab ourselves a free set of the full plate armor. Blaze?
Alright, the full plate armor, this seems like it should be better, but it just reduces your physical damage by 25%. Save yourself from having to buy this if you're at least of soldier rank here in this game. Get it from the guy in the bar, and there you go. Save yourself 5,000 or so bucks.
Don't mess with me, I used to be in soldier, for those who get the reference. From my favorite game of all time, but yeah, stop off, get some keys as well. So now that we're at the soldier rank, we have king keys for the first time again. Say that very quickly. It sounds a little odd, but yeah, for 18,000 experience, you can earn that soldier title, and they'll give you that set of armor for free. And feel bad for that guy that traded in for a drink, by the way, to that guy, but it sounds like a sad story. There's a sad story behind that, but focusing on the keys here, we're going to grab a few king keys right here. And we are, if we die right now, I want to mention with the soldier rank, our starting gold will be 6,200, so if we die. So you can see that's why it's not that big of a deal to get the better rankings in this game, outside of saving ourselves some money on that full plate armor, which don't forget to equip that, by the way. But yeah, and we're now down to 20 seconds on our wing boot time, so only one more rank above this, which saves at 20 seconds, and then the last 4 titles of this game will knock you down to just 10 seconds of wing boot duration. Such a backward system, really doesn't incentivize you to save your game or kill the enemies, or just play the game as you would think is intended. But anyway, as we leave Victim and we head out to the east, plenty of opportunities, as you'll see, to earn yourself some bread. So, yes, you don't need to go back and hit that treatment center if you didn't want to, if you're a little low in health, because you got a whole bunch of tentacle-like enemies here, which can essentially top you off after you take down a few of them. Enemies around here aren't too dangerous, grand scheme of things. So we're heading out here more east than we would need to, just so we can stop off here and earn ourselves a pretty useful spell, actually, in the fire spell. It's going to cost you 3 grand. Do you know the magic of fire? I'll teach you for 3,000 golds. This kind of walrus-looking guy with that mustache. I like after he sells it to us. It could be magic of justice or magic of destruction. All depends on who uses it. I probably should have vetted you before I taught you that, but you're a good guy, right? Just to be, whatever. You gave me 3 grand. That's good enough for me. But Blaze, flame spell?
Alright, this is the case where the manual kind of gets this wrong, the fire spell. This goes across the screen and through some enemies as well. Very good spell. It's actually the best damage on investment return, your DOI, your damage upon investment. That acronym doesn't make sense, but you know what I'm saying. It's the best bang for your buck. 25 damage for 6 MP, so you're doing more than 4 damage per MP. Can't get a better return than that. The more powerful spells can be useful when you don't have a lot of time. You're more concerned about taking damage and dishing out damage, but still, fire, a very good spell.
Thank you, Blaze. I want to mention that the right door we can't unlock right now, and the left door has an NPC which is going to give us something to unlock that door, but he won't give it to us just yet until we grab something from where we're ultimately going, up here and to the left. But yeah, the fire spell, to Blaze's point, it's with the good return on your investment. If you're like me and you've been a little conservative with your magic bar, not wanting to burn that death spell because it's so expensive, the fire is a much better value for magic. So this guy sometimes will drop, or sometimes you'll get yourself a pair of wing boots here. So we're just gonna, since we're pretty much full up on our inventory right now, I'm gonna use my existing pair of wing boots, which I guess will have 20 seconds now that we're a soldier, and grab the new pair. And now we have just a nice way to avoid some enemy fire and damage and take a mini shortcut right here. Not the worst. Not necessary by any stretch, but being that inventory space is such a premium right now. Avoid a couple baddies, avoid a little bit of damage, and this is our next actual destination we want right here. This is the Tower of Mist, which has an item which we'll want to grab in the Black Onyx. Have Blaze talk about that when we get there, but for right now, use your King Key and head inside right here. We have a new enemy, or a new boss, which Gary's going to cover. Has a good strategy for you at the end of this one. So we accidentally used our elixir. I say accidentally because I would have much preferred to use my red potion a couple towers ago as we were heading out, but a little sloppy. Good news is there are replacement elixirs to be found here in the Tower of Mist, or one at least, which, I mean, we can go back and grab again if we need it, but hopefully we'll just need the one right here. So mention instances where the ointment can be very useful in certain stretches of this game. When it appears, we have a hidden ointment, which is going to trigger 1 in 4 chance when we take down all the baddies on this screen. It's probably better to stay in or come in from the bottom half of the screen rather than going up the top, because when the enemies come down, we'll be ready to use that red potion, speaking of which, since we don't have an elixir to fall back on this time. But yes, we'll get ourselves, as we use the red potion, get ourselves the ointment, and that will make getting to the elixir a lot easier. So as soon as you grab this, as always, when you find a hidden elixir, or you trigger an elixir, which wasn't there before, you want to be as quick as possible so you can maximize the efficiency of that item. We want to take the bottom route for the purposes of beating this part, but we're just going to stay up top so we can get the elixir, which is, there's one of those guys that drops those boulders. Thankfully, these projectiles don't hurt us while we have the ointment. Makes getting up there to actually just get past him in the first place, if you're coming in from the left, a whole lot safer, because again, those boulders do a lot of damage, as you would expect, to our unprotected skull. So you should be able, if you're moving fast at a full clip right here, should be able to get to about this screen before the ointment wears off. And now we have our first instance of a new boss here in Faxanadu. Gary, who we got?
Boss beaters. Right, the Zoradohna. I think this boss went to the same battle school as one of the earlier enemies we faced. You let him jump over your head, you get him against a wall, and you jump and you stab him in the head. Just put a little distance between yourself and the boss like we show here. And generally, if you have the higher roof on that side of the screen, it's a bit easier. Sometimes a lower roof can throw a monkey wrench into things. You might want to lure him to the other side if the low ceiling isn't playing along. But yeah, get a nice rhythm like we show right here. Not too difficult to take down Zoradohna.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, it's a good strategy because there are a handful of those guys sprinkled throughout the rest of the game. We even have one more en route to getting the aforementioned Black Onyx, which is right below us technically, but we still need to backtrack out this way. Not too dangerous though. Mind that we do have one of those guys working the mining machine, if you will, so we want to be quite quick when we come in from this right side. And as Gary mentioned earlier, just essentially jump right on top of the boss himself, if you want to call him that, and then you can see the elixir respawn down there, and just stab his machine right there. You can see how much damage just one of those boulders did, but... So, technically we want to go to the right to face another one of those guys and get ourselves the item, but we're going to head back here, play it safe, and grab ourselves one more ointment. So, while we're doing this, let's bring in Fluff for another Fluff fact about Faxanadu.
We've talked a lot about the direct developer here on Faxanadu in Hudson Soft, during plenty of other classes on their games, which you can check out via the playlist in the description. So I thought instead I'd talk a bit about the company they licensed from to create Faxanadu, Nihon Falcom. The company was founded in 1981 by Masayuki Kato, and the Falcon name was purportedly an homage to Han Solo's famous ship, the Millennium Falcon. But they swapped con for com to better fit with their computer and software-focused industry. The company is still very active today with roughly 100 releases in their 50-plus year history, and they're arguably best known for their East series of games, which holds the distinction of having the second most titles in a JRPG series after Final Fantasy. One last fun note on Falcom, I actually briefly mentioned the developer last year during our class on the Super Nintendo action RPG title Illusion of Gaia, pointing out that that game was designed by Quintet, a developer which was formed by two former employees of Falcom, and Tomoyoshi Miyazaki and Masaya Hashimoto, who actually created the aforementioned E-series while working at Falcom.
Yep, one of my favorites of all time. Love doing that class, Illusion of Gaia. Thank you, Fluff. It's cool seeing how the dots connect with these different developers. It's actually possible to get down here without taking any damage. You need to bait him to jump to the left, and as soon as he does, start moving back to the right, and just like that. And then we'll employ Gary's strategy for taking him down to ensure we don't take any damage during this battle. And burn that elixir just as quickly as we picked it up. There you go. And the Black Onyx, mentioned it a few times. Blaze?
The Black Onyx gives you a small reduction to the damage that you take. Passive item right here, better than nothing.
Thank you, Blaze. And not gonna roll the dice anymore. Let's burn that last red potion in our case and backtrack on out of here. Might try that fire spell out on some of the baddies. Taking the high road to avoid a lot of the damage on the way out. One guy's very eager to come on over. So we need to turn in this Black Onyx to someone in order to get ourselves a new key, which we'll need to continue on. So we get to see our fire spell working pretty handily against that boss/mini-boss. And didn't eat into our magic bar too badly either, so very nice. If you want to grab yourself an ointment on that screen for the way out, it's your prerogative. We got a lot of backtracking to do now to turn in the ace, or the Black Onyx for the ace key. We had the Joker key earlier, and we can purchase the Jack, Queen, and King keys, but yes, the Joker and the ace key are the kind of wild card keys, if you will, which we can only get by redeeming them or getting them as items from certain NPCs, as will be the case in the key we're going to grab right now. So just follow along, and we're going to bring in Fluff while we do this for another Fluff fact about the game of Faxanadu.
I mentioned Faxanadu as a spin-off in the main Dragon Slayer series from Nihon Falcom. The original Dragon Slayer game was released in 1984 for Japanese computer systems of the time, like the PC-8801 and FM7, and is low-key one of the most influential video games of all time. Often considered to be the first Japanese action role-playing game, it introduced or built upon now familiar concepts like an in-game map to help navigation and dungeon crawling, item management, and item-based puzzle solutions. As you might expect, Dragon Slayer was a huge influence on Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda, which would be released less than 2 years later, which in turn is cited as being one of the most influential video games of all time. Speaking of which, check out our recent class on The Legend of Zelda via the link to the playlist in the description.
Yep, one of the greatest of all time in The Legend of Zelda. But it's cool to see that, obviously everything came from something, even the games which we consider to be, some of the most influential of all time. Even they got their concepts from something else, and then those things in turn got their concepts from something else as well. Even the ones which predate video games. It all came from somewhere. But anyway, yes, check out that class. Very much recommend it. As well as our class on the second quest for The Legend of Zelda. That was a fun one because I didn't do the second quest nearly as much as a kid, so it was fun seeing how they changed everything up for that and coming up with the strategies for giving yourself the best head start in that game. So if we climb up that ladder to the left, you can just see it up there on the top. That will lead us to a tower which has a red potion, but in order to get that red potion, you need to burn a pair of wing boots just to fly up there. So not worth the exchange, and yeah, just not really worth the key which it takes to get in there in the first place as well. So don't recommend going up there. It's a very small dungeon and just not worth the time. So we're just gonna keep on keeping on this way to turn in that black onyx item. That's some poison which triggered right there. Be careful. Yeah, sometimes just to trick you, they'll drop in the poison, making you think it's something good because it just appeared, but not the case. This guy will be impressed that we were brave and entered that last tower and got ourselves that black onyx, and he will now give us the ace key, which we can use right next door. By the way, this enemy on the screen right now, this Sugata magician-like guy, his attack can't be avoided. He'll just use a spell which hits you no matter where you are, so you want to kill him or just get off the screen as quickly as possible whenever you spot one of him. Thankfully, there's not too many of those in the game, but yeah, they can be annoying. In this area, they like to hide a number of those spawning in items behind that foreground, these columns. On the next screen, I believe there's an ointment which appears on the far side. For what it's worth, not necessarily necessary. Let's see if we can get one to appear here, just to show how sneakily hidden it is. Thankfully, it's not poison. Well, in more ways than one, really, but yeah, poison has that narrower container, so it'd be easier to hide. But yeah, it would appear there if we were able to trigger one. It's not a big deal. This is not, again, all that dangerous of an area, and plenty of opportunities to get health back as well. These tentacle-like creatures, lampreys, they will drop health pretty handily, pretty regularly. So regular that it's every single time, actually, so. Got these serpents on the ladders, just knock them off, the Necron aids. And no excuse to, and this is kind of frustrating right here, unless you're burning some, by which I mean using, I keep saying burning, but unless you're using some wing boots, very difficult to avoid that poison right there, so just takes a little knock to your health, about a quarter right there. Not that big of a deal, but just frustrating with its location right there, if nothing else. So ultimately we have another town over here on the right. This is the town of Conflate. Interesting names, some of these. Different towns. Victim, Conflate. Want to make sure that you have at least 8,500 gold when you come here, and it's very safe and easy to just do some money grinding just outside of town if you do need some cash. But when you are in town, stop off at the weapon shop here, item shop, grab yourself the giant blade. And Blaze, how about that giant blade, as we're counting every penny to this guy.
Alright, the giant blade. Very good weapon. Doing more than double the damage we were before. 20 damage with the giant blade. Better late than never to have a decent upgrade in the physical damage department.
Yeah, it's going to make everything a lot more manageable moving forward with that massive leap in the damage category. Grab some red potions to round out the rest of our inventory now, or as many as we can purchase at least with the money we've got right now. You can see they have the magic shield in stock here for more money than we spent initially on it, but wish we could sell off some of our old equipment, you know, but a lot of the traders in this game will only allow you to sell things which they themselves carry, which I understand actually, you know. Hard to sell it if it's substantially worse than everything else they have in stock, or just obsolete comparatively, so. Would have been nice to make a little extra cash, though. Not that the weapons part of our inventory has a cap or anything like that. So after we leave Conflate with that giant blade, we're gonna make it a point to grab a few items which we'll need near the end of the game, or which we won't be able to use until near the end of the game, but we'll still need to pick them up ahead of time. So we're gonna head west from Conflate, staying on the bottom path here. And need a lot of keys here. Unfortunately, I think I counted one queen key too many. So that's just in our inventory, unaccountably just taking up real estate. Can't even just drop it, unfortunately, and we can't sell it to a merchant unless they sell those queen keys themselves. So, well, it's not ideal, but we'll make do, we'll manage. Make sure you use that giant blade right there. Good reminder. Make sure you equip that. And we have a glove right there appearing after you take down the enemies there. And got another one of these guys, but same strategy works, as Gary mentioned before. And you can even get a couple hits in. Sometimes you kind of see like a stack of double hit. If you're close enough, it's not worth getting so close that you risk taking damage, but we've got the battle helmet now, and you'll see we can't equip this right now, but Blaze, the battle helmet?
Alright, the battle helmet. Just a little bit better than that magic shield. Essentially the same idea as a magic shield, or a shield in general. This blocks out 99% of projectile and magic damage, basically making you invulnerable from those types of shots, but you can only equip this once you have that Dragon Slayer sword.
And we can't get that until we have these other items, so there you go. Thank you, Blaze. And one more item which we will need before we can get that sword as well. And one more item which we can't use also, maybe better said, until we have that sword, is the, well, we're heading to it right now, so. Let's see, I'm trying to ditch that queen key. Nice little trick to kind of give yourself a little more inventory space is to kind of actively have one item equipped in your inventory like that. That takes it out of the inventory and puts it in that on-deck spot. So now we actually would be able to purchase one extra item right there in our inventory while we're holding this. And then we can just swap it out for whatever we want to use on demand. So little trick right there. Since we don't normally make it a point to actually hold the anything in that slot, like a red potion, like I probably should, but there's always time to pause everything and bring up that items menu and get that item primed and ready to go should you need it. Get as many red potions as possible. Again, money's not really an issue at this stage in the game, for the most part. Make sure you have at least one king key when you leave right here, as we will need to use one in just a moment. When we leave town this time, we're going to head up the ladders to a different area, and we'll just follow along. And while we're doing this, let's bring in Fluff for another Fluff fact about Faxanadu.
The Japanese release of Faxanadu allowed players to enter their names, which would be reflected in text and conversations throughout the game, assuming, of course, the player's name was 4 letters or less. I guess Gary qualifies at least. This feature was unaccountably removed for the international release. Speaking of which, like a lot of games from Japan which came to the NES at the time, Faxanadu got the typical treatment from Nintendo's censorship policy, specifically in removing religious symbols like crosses in the international version of the game in what are clearly still religious buildings. There's nothing strange about that, but what is a head-scratcher is that the same censor was seemingly cool with the fact that literally every other NPC in this game is an obvious chain smoker, including a lot of the first people you meet. I tell you, Professor, it's getting to the point where you can just as reliably count on Nintendo's censors, unaccountably and hypocritically leaving in as many things in most games they claim should be censored as the things they take out.
Yeah, I was wondering about those chain smokers, or the prominently displayed cigarettes in half of the NPCs in this game's mouths. We're going to drop down here and grab that ointment ahead of time. That's optional, obviously, but we recommend grabbing that hidden ointment and making this a little easier. And then we're going to drop down between those two bridges, and this is actually going to save us from having to use an extra key, which we would need to open that door on the left if we were coming in from that way. So a little bit of a shortcut, and saves us from having to have an extra king key in that case. As we go south here, and we're going to climb up here to grab ourselves an easy-to-get item at the top of this ladder. Right up here. And what did we just get? We got the magical rod. Blaze?
Alright, the magical rod. This gives you a increase in damage and spells for roughly 50%, so a nice passive boost right there. The magical rod.
There you go, a little more power in those spells. Thank you, Blaze. And got another of these Zoradohna bosses. Just use Gary's strategy and get yourself the battle suit now. Blaze?
Alright, the battle suit. Pick this up. This reduces physical damage by 50%, but you can only equip this once you have that Dragon Slayer sword, the best sword in the game.
Alright, good call, Blaze. So we are now backtracking through this area, and we're gonna go where we had a fork before, where I mentioned we could, where we dropped in from that bridge, went to the right, and up the ladder, and then ultimately went down to the right, by the way. To get back up here, just climb up this ladder and stab this guy without getting off, otherwise he will knock you off the ladder and back down below. It's, I think, the only way to get through that. It took me a while to figure that out, but very frustrating moment right there if you don't know what to do, as he just keeps knocking you back down. But continuing on here, so this time we went up at the fork, and there is some poison if you go down this ladder right here, actually. So we're going to skip that. No reason to go down there. And there's some wing boots which have a chance of appearing over there on the leftmost side of this room. Take down these baddies. Doing some more American Ninja Warrior, or just Ninja Warrior in general, or again, American Gladiator type stunts right there. Requires a lot of upper body strength from our hero. Got these guys that look like they came out of Castlevania, or maybe Link's Adventure, Adventures of Link. The Magmans, I believe they're called. Yeah, you can make an argument for it, right? This guy's beating up on me. Doofy looking giant strider, but there you go. Get yourself some wing boots. Very easily right there. As we continue up and to the east here. Yeah, I can't, that's a dead end on that side, so we gotta climb our way up. Just wait for this enemy to disappear as you move to the right off the screen. And going down and to the right will lead us to one of the final cities in this game in Daybreak. City, bit of a grandiose term. Town, let's say. You can stop off here and get yourself some meat right here. 500 gold. Getting expensive. This gives you that 50% boost right there. And I think this guy actually, aside from being yet another chain smoker, we buried the lead on these guys, just haven't mentioned the way they're animated yet. He just looks like he's over everything. Looks like it'd be difficult to find the time in this man's life where he doesn't have a cigarette hanging out of that mouth, which, big ol' head scratcher when it comes to Nintendo sensors, but... And as Fluff mentioned, we finally get to offload that queen key right there. And as Fluff mentioned, head scratcher, considering these guys appear in that first town. You know, it's not like they're buried late in the game and the sensor just couldn't play that deep into the game to figure it out or see this for themselves. No, they're right there. Alright, so knowing now, make sure you buy 2 king keys and then make your way back to Conflate and talk to this guy who won't give you the ring that you need until you have both the battle suit and the battle helmet, which we have collected. But we couldn't get back to him until we had the keys from Daybreak, if you get what I'm saying, so a little frustrating. But back in Daybreak, there is a spell which we want, which is going to cost us 15 grand, so we're going to do a little bit of grinding outside of town here before we head back to the town of Daybreak as we jump ahead. And now we're going to make this purchase for 15,000. And Blaze, we just got a ring from the Guru in Conflate. What does that do?
Alright, the Sapphire Ring, the Dwarf variety. This allows you to access the Dartmoor Castle, so you need this to progress the game.
Fair enough. And the Tilte Spell, which we just mortgaged our house for.
Alright, Tilt is the most powerful magic in the game. It kind of sweeps up, arcs up from where you cast it. Useful against a couple of the later bosses in the game, but you can see roughly 40 damage for 15 MP. It ain't cheap, but it sure is deadly.
Thank you, Blaze. And that would be the last spell, but we skipped the Thunder Spell. Didn't buy that one. You could get that much earlier on in the game, and I guess to explain why we didn't buy it, Blaze, how about that Thunder Spell?
Alright, the Thunder Spell. I think the manual gets this one mixed up with fire. It doesn't do all that much damage, 10 damage for 4 MP roughly. This goes a short distance, but it can pass through some walls, so for what that's worth, not too useful though in my estimation. You can skip this one if you ask me.
And that's what we did. Thank you very much, Blaze. Also maxed out our red potion count, just with that grind money essentially. Certainly justified to spend the 1,200 to max out those red potions at this stage in the game. This is a very linear path right here, no secrets to be found, no items. This area is not linear, just follow our route for the most efficient route to get to where you need to go. You can go up there and to the left to have a chance to spawn in some red potions if you need them, but again, we probably have so much money at this stage in the game, you're not too worried about it. Just went ahead and filled out your inventory like we did ahead of time. Go to the right there on that last screen, and that would have led you to Dartmoor Village, but nothing there we couldn't buy elsewhere already, so we're just gonna drop down here, and the prices are as expensive as they get in the game, essentially. And thankfully we don't need any more keys at this point, so that's nice from those chain-smoking, red-faced, just smoking like a chimney, those guys. This is kind of frustrating, these bees. It's better just to clear the path before you move left to right here. Make sure you have a full head of steam before you make that jump, and you're right there at the edge. But yes, we're going to Fraternal Castle now, which will have the Dragon Slayer sword, the best sword in the game. Ignore that poison, obviously. We're gonna skip that door, can't open that yet anyway. Need a special ring to access that. Yes, the Dragon Slayer sword got its namesake, obviously, from the Dragon Slayer series, which, as Fluff mentioned, this game is a part of. Ointment is going to be very, very useful in Fraternal Castle, as you'll see. It's a bit of a maze. Not the worst we've encountered, but a lot of it looks the same. Everything's very blue, but careful with this jump right here. It's easy to miss that gap. So follow this route now that we are in Fraternal Castle. And we're going to grab ourselves some very useful ointment, which is going to save ourselves a lot of grief as we get to King Grieve, the penultimate boss in this game, which I think we can finally get to use that hourglass item we've been carrying around for a very long time. We'll have Gary explain that once we get to that. Yeah, I got these guys. A lot of guys who used to be kind of bosses earlier on in the game, now just kind of being used as throwaway enemies all over. This being one of them right here. So, actually, this is one instance where you don't need to actually kill the enemy to get the item to appear. You just have a 1 in 4 chance of it appearing on the screen, and just I was very much in the mindset of checking and then immediately leaving. You saw it appeared that one time, so we're just going on the screen. If you don't see that ointment, leave and return, and then when it does appear, just use Gary's tip from earlier, just stand in place in this case, and stab this guy in the head a few times, take him down, make some cash. And now that you have the ointment, as always, we're going to move very quickly to maximize this and make getting to King Grieve a little bit easier. We can't use it during our battle with King Grieve, even if you're as quick as possible. I guess if you used wing boots right there to give yourself a shortcut, but not necessary with Gary's strategy. So climb that ladder, cross this gap right here, climb this ladder right here, and then go around. Poison's admittedly kind of difficult to avoid right there, but this should last you till right about you get to this boss, and then it's gonna die off. But Gary, King Grieve.
Boss beaters. All right, King Grieve. Time to finally use our hourglass if you have one. Just keep in mind, like Blaze mentioned, this will sap half of your health, so make sure you're healed up or healed up after you use it. But this won't freeze King Grieve, but it will stop him from firing his projectiles, so then you can just focus on watching out when he flies around the screen and just smacking him when he gets close enough with Tilt or whatever your most powerful spell is at the time, as well as manual shots. But it's best to keep your distance and use your magic if possible, because you could still take some serious damage by getting touched by this boss, projectiles or not. And just have that red potion on hand, be ready to heal, and take him down.
Good call, Gary, and we finally got the Dragon Slayer sword. Blaze, how about it?
The Dragon Slayer, the most powerful physical weapon in the game. This allows you to do 25 damage and also allows you to wear the battle suit and that battle helmet.
Thank you, Blaze, and we're about to get one last ring from the guy in this room after we've done all of that. Blaze, I believe it's the Ring of Death, or the Death Ring. What's it called?
The Demon's Ring. This allows you to access the final fortress in the game, plus it looks friggin' metal.
Alright, there you go, yeah, the Demon Ring. Yeah, we'll need that to unlock a door moving forward, one that I pointed out along the way. So a little backtracking now. After this guy finally finishes talking, gonna head back to Dartmoor, just make sure we're all ready for this final stretch, which with our tips we're going to be showing you how to navigate that area and play that. Yeah, we have a fun little hack to make it especially easy very late in this game, so. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Oh, by the way, don't forget to equip that Dragon Slayer sword. This will allow you to automatically equip the helmet and the armor automatically as soon as you get that on. So, looks very cool compared to what we were rocking before. Nice reach, and certainly some very good damage. Recommend grabbing the ointment on the way out just to make the egress from this area a little bit easier. And while we're backtracking here, let's go to Fluff for one last Fluff fact about Faxanadu.
The music for Faxanadu was composed by Hudson Soft's Jun Chikuma, who also composed the music from another game we did a recent class on, an Adventure Island. Not to mention a staggering nearly 20 Bomberman games, most of those before the year 2000.
That's pretty crazy, and yeah, now that you mention Adventure Island, I can definitely hear that. It's that same kind of tone in those notes that you had in Adventure Island. Yeah, that's funny. There you go. Well, anyway, you can see we're making the most of that ointment right there as we are backtracking out now. And heading back to Dartmoor, which we pointed out before. Doofy looking snake enemy right there. The Necron aid. Plenty of red potions. I think we're looking pretty good on that. Absolutely recommend that you have at least one pair of wing boots for this final little shortcut, which we're going to mention in the final area of this game, which without the little hack, which we're going to be showing you here, if you want to call it that, can be quite formidable. It's a extremely large maze relative to everything else in this game. That's where we would enter right down there, but there's just gonna, whatever. We'll get topped off back in the town of Dartmoor, make sure we get our magic and everything rocking for us. We're good to go. Still have that elixir in our back pocket, I believe. Should we need it? I don't think we should. But it does help to have full magic if you want to have that Tilte Spell ready for the final boss. Depending on how you want to fight them. We're going to mention a couple different options, or better said, Gary's going to mention a couple different options. When the enemies just drop off the ledge and sink like a sack of bricks. Very much like Mega Man in the very first Mega Man, before they decided gravity doesn't affect him quite as aggressively, or I guess Simon Belmont in the first of the Castlevania games. I don't know, he falls pretty fast in most of the games, but anyway, we're going to jump to the right off of that and just head to the right to head to Dartmoor Town. You can pop in here to see this little guy. Flick him off or cast some spells at him right there. Not sure how this guy's hitting us, by the way. Is he like going through the... Oh, he does have a little bit of reach on his sword right there. And can't get that bread. Alright. Anyway, yes. But I digress. Yes, let's go to Dartmoor to the right now. Hidden behind that path right there. You can get one last checkpoint if you so choose. Grab some rations here, the dried meat. About 1,600 will get you topped off, or exactly 1,600 will get you just under topped off. See what this guy's offering here in this final store in the game. He's got a few things in case you missed them at this stage at exorbitant prices, like the giant blade, and red potions have never been so expensive, but again, we don't really need the money at this stage, so go ahead and spend whatever you got. Make sure you're filled up on red potions, but I guarantee you'll need one at most for this final stretch, but just in the interest of being prepared, having some drinks for the walk home, the ride home, as we like to do here on Video Games 101. That's all there is for the rest of town. Very expensive to get treatment in this town, by the way, of Dartmoor. $3,000 versus the 800. So, technically it's a better deal just to spend, I'd say about 2,400 to certainly top off both bars versus getting the treatment for all-in-one, as is usually the case in this game, but looking pretty good. Make sure we have one of our red potions handy and ready to go. We got the winged boots, got an extra one as well. Just wanted to go in with full health, but not a big deal. We're gonna get smacked around along the way. So I pointed it out earlier, this, you still need to go up and over right here because of the ledge if you try going in from the bottom way. Yeah, these annoying little bugs right here. Buzzing about just here to annoy us. But yeah, if you have everything you need, you can pop right in right there and enter the final area. Alright, so this is the hack right here. Go to this right side of this room, use the winged boots, fly up and go to the right here. Drop down and fly to the right on this screen. And grab yourself some ointment right there. We're going to skip it just because it's a little too cheesy. We're going to show you how to beat this if you don't want to do that, but still, this is the shortcut to getting to this boss. You can just skip this guy. But yeah, if you have the ointment, much easier boss fight, but for tips on taking down the final boss, Gary, take us home.
Boss beater, the evil one. You can use the ointment to cheese this battle like the professor mentioned. Otherwise, not too difficult to battle, just have a red potion handy. Lure the boss over to the corner and just dodge the projectiles as they're coming over. And then just jump, get those stabs in the head with that Dragon Slayer, the best sword. Won't take too long, you'll probably only have to go through one red potion, or even less, if you're good at dodging those projectiles, but yeah, enough stabs will take down the evil one, and congratulations, you have beaten Faxanadu.
Thank you very much, Gary. Excellent work today. Excellent work to all my TAs. We head back and see the king. I like the upcoming line here. I understand you will leave to continue your journey. What a restless guy. I don't know, I just picture Eugene Levy or John Candy or somebody from those late 80s comedies delivering that line right there. But there you go, as our hero walks off in search of the next adventure, the next challenge, like a Ryu or a Cody, someone from the Capcom universe. That concludes our Faxanadu walkthrough here on Video Games 101. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to enroll in this class. We do one of these classes every single week in the same spot. Love to have you enrolled. Please click that like button as well. It really does help us out to make future classes for you. And leave a comment. How do you pronounce the title of this game? But as Fluff mentioned, it's all good however you do it. But that's our time this week. Thank you so much everyone who requested this game to help us celebrate that milestone here on Video Games 101. And here's to many more. But we'll see you next week in the same spot for next week's class right here on Video Games 101. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and comment on this video, and click subscribe if you haven't already, as this seriously helps me to keep making great content for you. And check the description of this video to see what song is playing right now.